Last week I put out a video with some predictions on what games we would see in the recently announced Nintendo June Direct that would likely be the last hurrah for the Nintendo Switch. Well, today I want to look a bit ahead of that and speculate on some games we could expect to see on the successor of the Nintendo Switch next year. The promise of a new console always brings a lot of excitement, and I'm not immune to that excitement, so let's talk hopes, dreams, and a little bit of informed speculation into the games I think will be the first on the Switch 2 at or near launch. First things first, let's start with the main thing people come to Nintendo for, the first-party games. Switch 1 had a ton of first-party support, and I imagine for the most part, nothing is going to change there for the Switch 2. There are a couple of heavy hitters in particular I think we are due for and pretty much expect at least one of these at the launch of the next system, and the other to come shortly thereafter. And those games are the next 3D Mario and the next Mario Kart. That's not a super crazy thought there in my opinion. 3D Mario hasn't got a full new release since 2017's Mario Odyssey, and as much as I like Bowser's Fury, that felt like it was almost half new game, half Nintendo experimenting and testing the waters for a new Mario format. If the launch title for the next Switch is the same vein of Bowser's Fury, but with more levels and power-ups, I would be pretty happy. That being said, I did prefer the movement in Odyssey, so if they build on what that game felt like and mix in some of the ideas from Bowser's Fury, that would be ideal to me. But let's be honest here. We know what the real draw of the next Switch is. The thing that's going to sell and sell and sell for the next 10 years or so. And that's the next Mario Kart. It's been a decade since Mario Kart 8 originally released, and through that game and the Switch 8 Deluxe re-release, it's sold over 70 million copies, and that doesn't even really make any sense to me. But now the question isn't, will the next Switch have a new Mario Kart? It's, what's the gimmick? Personally, I think an expanded roster with more Nintendo franchises would be neat, but that's not enough to justify the time between releases to me. At this point, I'm almost expecting something drastic, like airplane levels like Diddy Kong Racing, or maybe a fully explorable overworld campaign, also like Diddy Kong Racing. But yeah, 3D Mario and Mario Kart, those are locks for the first 6 months of the Switch 2 for me. Now, speaking of Mario Kart 8 and all of its success, I think we'll see something trying to replicate that model on the Switch 2, and that game is Smash Ultimate. I've had trouble picturing how you follow up Ultimate, and I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo's answer to that is follow up Ultimate with Ultimate Deluxe, or something silly like that, to buy time for the next true Smash game. I imagine this would be a nice up-res port and would come with all the DLC from the original game, as well as a couple Fighters Passes promised so they can start riding that Smash character hype train for all the directs again. Throw this game near launch, have a better online infrastructure, let people go to town. It'll probably sell another 30 million copies or so. I would also not be surprised to also see something similar with the two big Zelda games from the Switch. Unsure about Tears of the Kingdom, but some sort of Breath of the Wild Deluxe with all the DLC running at 60 frames with some fancy graphics, and voila! That is a $70 game now they can resell. The last lock on the first party side is kind of a boring one, but it's a boring one that I am excited for, and that's Metroid Prime 4. If this game is real, I figure we ought to hear something soon. Metroid Prime Remaster has to exist for some reason, and marketing for Prime 4 is probably that reason. In my head, Prime 4 is a cross-gen title that may or may not be right at the launch of the Switch 2. I would like to say right at launch, but Metroid is not enough to launch a console with when there could be a 3D Mario or Mario Kart for people to buy. I just don't picture Nintendo releasing multiple big first-party games day one. So I think Metroid is like the month after the launch to bridge the gap from launch game to the other system seller game. I wish Metroid had the presence to be a launch title for a new console, but I still don't think it has quite that widespread appeal. Okay, so now we have 4 or 5 games I think are decently safe bets for the first 6 months or so. 2 big single-player games, the 3D Mario and a Metroid Prime 4, and 2 multiplayer-focused games in Mario Kart and Smash. Now time to start getting wishlisty and start picking out games I want to see that aren't as likely. Nintendo shined a spotlight on a lot of their franchises during the last 7 years on the Switch, but I think it's about time to shine some of that light on some of those other franchises so they can get a shot at being a big hit with a launch title to push them into that next tier. And I think the one I would want the most here would be a new DK game. Tropical Freeze was great, but that was a Wii U game originally, and I think the Ape deserves a brand new shot. With all the attention Donkey Kong is getting lately outside of the games and the movie and the theme park, I think a DK game would make a lot of sense. I would like to see a 3D game, but maybe that would be a little overcrowded if there was 3D Mario at launch. So I'd be happy to see another 2D game of the quality of Tropical Freeze. Another franchise I would like to see another chance is F-Zero, but sadly I think F-Zero 99 might be what we get there for the next few years. So I'll jump down to the next thing on the list of forgotten toys with Star Fox. Star Fox was relegated to DLC for an Ubisoft game on the Switch, which was cool, but kind of strange. I think this furry little freak and friends deserve another shot with their own game. I think the common consensus is Star Fox kind of peaked for most people back on the N64, and you know what? Hell, why not just let them do something like that again and really try to make it a visual showcase for the new console? Keep it on rails, make it pretty short but with some replayability, and make it really shine. Make Star Fox show off the 4K, not right away at the 5 below. Last thing on my wish list is a couple RPGs I want to see. I'm a big RPG guy myself, and I think having one near launch would be a really wise decision to take up some people's time while new games are coming out. First up, I don't think it's a coincidence that Nintendo released Mario RPG and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door in the last year. Two games beloved in large part to their charming cast of characters and their stories, but also for just being solid RPGs. I think it's about time Nintendo makes another brand new full-on RPG Mario game. Also, while we're at it with the RPGs, please just also let Pokemon ZA, whatever it's called, be a Switch 2 game for the sake of that game's performance. Something I've been thinking about is the possibility of a pack-in game for the Switch 2. Quick points against it: the Switch didn't have a pack-in game, but sold incredibly well due to the strong launch games like Breath of the Wild, and the Switch 2 is likely to do the same thing, so why give out a game for free? The last big pack-in game that comes in mind on a Nintendo console for me was Wii Sports, which really was just there to show off the motion controls for the console. I obviously don't think we're going to get a pack-in Mario like in the NES or SNES days, of course, but I'm thinking something like a Switch Sports or even like a Tetris back on the Game Boy could go a long way here. I guess kind of what I'm stuck on, if there was a pack-in, even if it's a tech demo to show off some of the new power or features of the console, you know, something like Astro's Playroom on the PS5, maybe Nintendo could feel a little safer charging a pretty penny for this thing. The Switch OLED currently goes for $350. I bet Nintendo could charge $400 for the Switch 2 without a second glance if they market it as coming with a game as well. I don't know, just kind of spitballing here, but I like the idea. I would love to hear any thoughts on the possibility of a pack-in title for those watching. Alright, now time to have some fun. As strong of a library as the Switch had, it mainly relied on first-party and indie games. There was the occasional big third-party hit game like Monster Hunter Rise or Dragon Quest XI's Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition, but games like that were really an exception. The Switch, though, is basically running technology you'd find in a smartphone from back when Obama was president, so it makes a lot of sense why the big third-party games didn't make their way over to the system. Switch 2 will definitely have a big bump in power with that Nvidia partnership having time to cook, and them no doubt creating a unique chipset to make this thing hum. In all likelihood, we're going to see a lot more games that can make the jump over to this thing. Also, just to caveat the games I'm about to list, no way all of them come out at or near launch, but basically I'm saying any of these games I would not be surprised to see ports of in the first few months of the system's life. So I'll start off with a big one for me personally, and that's Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a gigantic hit, a game I love a whole lot, and it's about to release a big expansion. I think FromSoft and Nintendo could both benefit from having a complete edition of the game available at launch for the Switch 2. It was playable on the PS4 and the Xbox VCR, so I imagine it would be no big deal to get that thing on this new thing. Also, if I remember correctly, Nintendo did get the honors of announcing Dark Souls 1 Remastered during a Nintendo Direct before anyone else, so it's not like FromSoft and Nintendo are afraid to work together. Next up, we have my Capcom games wishlist that I expect to see. First one being Monster Hunter Wilds. I guess we don't know a whole lot about this game yet, so maybe this won't age well and that game will be a massive hit, big giant game pushing the PS5 and the Series X. But Monster Hunter Rise did do a killing on the Switch, and I bet Capcom would love to replicate that and feed the now hungry Nintendo audience with another game. The other big game I could think could make the jump would be Resident Evil 4 Remake. Another very impressive, beautiful game, but also another game that made its way to the PS4, and there's some precedence here with RE4 in particular coming to Nintendo consoles, with it famously being a quote-unquote GameCube exclusive, at least initially. Plus, I'm pretty sure there's a version of RE4 Remake on the iPhone, so let's not kid ourselves here. And then lastly, to wrap up the Capcom block, I wouldn't be surprised to see, maybe Street Fighter 6 hop over, and we can all complain about Nintendo's online infrastructure while playing matches. Next up is the Microsoft umbrella, and I think it's pretty safe to say the next Doom will make the skip over to the Switch 2 like the previous two entries did. Eternal released in 2020, so maybe 2025 is a possible timeline for a follow-up, who knows, but we do know at least that Microsoft will be putting Call of Duty on Nintendo systems, which I assume will start with the Switch 2. So maybe whatever this year's Call of Duty gets a version ported after release to coincide with the Switch 2 launch. Maybe we just wait for COD's inevitable 2025 release and it comes day one with the other versions. Now on to one of my favorite publishers, Square Enix. Square has stated in a recent financial call that they're moving to a multi-platform strategy moving forward. So I would think that means something like, Final Fantasy XVII will be made with a Switch 2 at least on the mind in the background. But that game is probably years away. But there is another huge franchise of theirs, Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest XII was announced 3 years ago in May of 2021 and has been pretty quiet since, so I would not be super surprised if maybe that's a 2025 game, and I'd be even less surprised if that game launched day and date on PS5 and the next new Nintendo system. Nintendo has been dominating Japan in sales for a while now, and DQ12 would be getting a killing if it got some love and attention on a brand new Nintendo platform. Fingers crossed, because Dragon Quest XI was an incredible game. Now, some of these games might have some realism to them, some might just be me getting in my own head and hoping, but this last big game is one that I think is a lock for a launch game on the Switch 2, and that's Hades 2. That game is in early access right now on Steam, and Nintendo doesn't touch that kind of stuff like Steam does, or even Xbox has shown some willingness to do. But I know Nintendo sure did love that money Hades 1 made them on the original Switch, and I would not be surprised at all if there were some conversations they were having with Supergiant to have Hades 2 come out of early access at the same time the Switch 2 comes out. It almost makes too much sense to me to not happen. Now, I'll be honest, I could go on and on with random other third-party games, but I think I ought to stop there. I do think, though, you can probably just look at a game that came out at any time in the PS4 or Xbox One generation, and if that publisher wants to make a quick buck, they'll make a port of it for the Switch 2. I bet Switch 2 ports are going to be coming in droves from all sorts of directions, from all sorts of publishers for a few years to start off, kind of like how the Wii U did with the Switch, but this time just with third-party games from that era. And with that, that's all I got, so thanks for watching. This is a fun video for me as I love speculating on video games, especially when Nintendo's involved. And I've loved the Switch since it came out, and I hope the Switch 2 can keep that momentum and consistency of quality, and that we're in for another near decade of great games. I would love to hear what games you think are likely, or just even possible, for the Switch 2 at launch, and why you think those games will be there. If you liked the video and want to click the like and or the subscribe buttons, that would mean a lot and goes a long way for me. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.